This Side of the Dream, a memoir. The introduction. I grew up in a loving family in the suburbs of Cherry Hill, New Jersey, in a neighborhood full of manicured lawns and tall oak trees that shaded smooth, black-paved streets. In the summer, the smell of honeysuckles overpowered a quaint park tucked at the back of the neighborhood, a haven for children, away from any cars or busy roads. I was a lucky child. In fact, I have no complaints. My father did quite well for himself and our family. He used to tell us stories about how, when he was young, growing up in South Camden, there were times when money was scarce. His father was a carpenter. Along with being a feast and famine trade, the job did not pay well. One time, my grandmother went to a deli and only had enough money for one hot dog. She split it 3 ways for her, my dad, and my aunt. Despite their money issues, he always talked about how his parents raised his sister and him with a lot of love, which was most important. When he was 18, my father started working in a warehouse for a new music company called Warner Elektra Atlantic. For the next 17 years, we promoted him to several positions within the company. He established his way to becoming the Northeast Regional VP of Sales and was a key music executive for 15 years. On the other hand, my mother came from wealthier surroundings. Not rich, per se, but comfortable. Her grandfather's family owned the South Jersey Bottling Company, which expanded to Atlantic City Bottling Company before the family sold it in 1981. I was the product of the union of these two families, raised in middle-class wealth, but with a humbleness that my father reminded me of when I received anything new as a child. My mother was an accounting music business executive. She met my dad in the business, who gave that life up to be a stay-at-home mother. She was the only accountant I knew who was fiercely creative, but also very organized. She handled being a stay-at-home mom like a CEO, always the PTA mother, always on time, always fighting for what was right. She never let people walk all over her and stood up for her children's education like no other parent. She was hard on me as a child, especially when it came to school. I resented her for many years until I understood the real reason why she pushed me so hard. She didn't want me to be the underdog. She knew how well I could do, and she wanted me to show the world my capabilities. She wanted me to prove to everyone else that girls could do anything. Girls could rise to the top. She was a strong, passionate Aries, but I was a stubborn Taurus, a bull who did my own thing when I wanted. So, in high school, I rebelled against her. I stopped getting my straight A's and went to a mostly A, B, and occasional C student. It wasn't because I couldn't do the work. I absolutely could. I just didn't want to. It was only in college that I realized I loved learning and school. I graduated with high honors and a prestigious English department award. I had thrived on every challenge and soaked up every learning opportunity. And I haven't stopped reading, studying, and learning since. I was one of those fledglings that never quite left the nest. Looking back on it, I know exactly why. In my 20s, my mother and I became best friends. I suspect we always were, but sometimes our age difference made it hard to enjoy the same interests. You know, when I was playing with Barbies, I'm pretty sure my mother didn't want to. And even though we hung out every day in my teens, I'm pretty sure she wasn't into NSYNC like I was. But as I grew older, we started to enjoy our time together. On our days off from work, we would go on lunch dates, walk at the park, take yoga classes, and shop for new clothes. Other times, we went on road trips to Virginia, South Carolina, or Florida, museum trips, or took a ride to the Jersey Shore to get a nice summer tan and grab a slice of pizza from the Ocean City boardwalk. We were fiercely loyalist friends, the bull and the ram, and even if we butted heads or argued, 5 minutes later, we were laughing again. Our adventures alone could fill an entire book. I spent countless hours seeking her advice about relationships, to which she would always reply, "You don't need anyone to be happy." When I would ask her about my jobs and what to do, she would never answer, "You need to make money," but instead would say, "You need to follow your dreams." I pursued an acting career, and my mother would drive to New York with me for an audition or a shoot, no matter how small. She was always eager to help me pursue anything artistic. When I first started writing, she didn't look at me with a quizzical look like my other family members did, one eyebrow cocked and a, "Are you sure you want to throw your life away?" look. Instead, she pushed me to write. She helped me research elements for my book, read every page, and gave me constructive criticism. She could visualize details better than anyone I knew and express the picture she saw in her mind. My mother was an artist herself, extraordinary in drawing and painting, and exceptionally gifted in design. I remember thinking she was some kind of high priestess or white goddess, the embodiment of feminine creativity. Her insecurities to pursue her own artistic career are what I believe made her so encouraging of my brother and me. When my brother said he wanted to be a musician, she let him practice for hours on end at our house with his band. When other mothers would complain of noise and be in bed by 8, or complain to their girlfriends that their son needed a real job, my mother was up late, listening to my brother play and working on whatever creative project she was in the middle of at the moment. For my mom, when mom duty ended, she thought she would be able to pursue her own talents. But financial hardship did not skip our house. It nearly demolished our family. Our family's financial troubles weighed heavily on all our minds, and our relationships with each other broke down piece by piece. To get out of our hopelessness, my mother and I studied many books about enlightenment and obtaining higher consciousness. In addition, my mother was fascinated by gemstones, their beauty, and their ability to interact with our energy fields. She had also been a lover of butterflies her entire life and brought them into everything she did. I still have butterflies she preserved as a child. After 2 years of studying almost every day and changing our mindsets, we started to pull ourselves out of the wreckage of our financial decline. We tried every day to transform the negativity avalanche that had been hurtling down the mountainside of our lives. I returned the encouragement my mother gave me to pursue my artistic talents by helping her set up a gemstone jewelry business called Rosanna Gemstone Creations. I worked with her closely over the years. She loved helping people through her gemstone creations. My mother was never in it for the money, possibly to her detriment. She was the type of person who, When she knew you needed help, she would give you the stone or bracelet you needed. She also wanted peace in her mind. For some reason, she didn't have it, but she tried to find it, and we worked on bettering ourselves every day. To do this, we spent a lot of time in nature. Because of our studies, our walks at the park transformed from getting in shape to spending time breathing fresh air, calming the mind, and taking in the beautiful scenery around us. My mother loved the beach because of all the elements coming together in one place. The sand as the earth, the breeze as the air, the ocean as the water, and the heat of the sun as fire. The beach grounds me, it centers me. I am at complete peace when I'm there, is what my mom would say to me or anyone who asked her. Our annual girls' retreat trips were always to the beach. It was a way for us to ground and center ourselves before returning to the normalcies of life. My mother and I spent time with friends who loved us, and we traveled everywhere as a team. To my friends' or her friends' houses, to dinners, on our trips, everywhere. Then, one day, she got sick, and just a few months later, she was dead. I was devastated, to say the least. My worst fear had happened to me. I not only lost my mother, whom I would always need, but I lost my best friend. Upon reading this book's title, one might think it's merely about my mother's death, but it isn't. This side of the dream is a personal growth book detailing the choices I had to make following my mother's death. It is the detailed story of my healing path to peace. What happens when a story wants to be told so badly it nags at you every day? You must let it out. You must write it. I knew that writing this book would be difficult. We humans have the extraordinary capability of not only accessing our memories, but for the emotionally charged ones, reliving them through every sense as though they were happening to us all over again. What do I mean by this? Think of your most powerfully charged memory, the first time you made love, the heartbreak that still stings, the friend who never spoke to you again, the time you won the lottery, lucky you, the day you welcomed your first child into the world, the time you got a scary diagnosis, or the time you lost your friend, parent, sibling, or child. If you think about that event, you may suddenly find yourself immersed in the experience as though it's happening all over again. You remember the sounds, what was on the television when it happened, the tastes. You remember that delicious piece of tiramisu you were eating, the smells, antiseptic, or the sights, dim lighting in a hospital room. The fact that our brains can access these memories and be all consumed in them once more is as miraculous as it is dangerous. It is miraculous because it's almost like a superpower to time travel to another time that isn't happening at the moment, but that we are experiencing as though it is. It is dangerous for the same reasons. Reliving an unpleasant trauma or experience can be bad for us psychologically and physically. And it's one of the reasons why I've had such a difficult time writing this book. You see, when I found out my mother was ill, I decided to keep a live journal of her journey. I mostly did it because I thought she would recover. I thought I would be sharing her incredible success story with the world. I honestly did not believe that she would die, suffering tremendously from pancreatic cancer. The detailed journals I kept are the real-time thoughts of a desperate daughter. I try my best to be as descriptive as possible. Sometimes in my journals, I may seem irrational or one can feel the rage brimming inside me. My thoughts change about different subjects like doctors and God. Dreams are an essential part of the healing process for me, and so is art. In those journals, I reveal all my raw emotions of my experience watching my mother die. I knew I had to share this raw emotion with the world, but I was terrified of revisiting these memories. Every time I did, I was in that memory again. I found myself at a crossroads. I had to share my story, but how would I share my story with the world without being stuck in another time in my life, one I wanted to forget? Eventually, I could no longer put off the call to share my story, which burned like a wildfire in my bones. This experience was mine. No one else could tell this story but me. And yet, there was a whole mess of people out there who would probably read my words and say, "Yes, I know that feeling. I've been in that place too." Or, "I'm there right now." I had many troublesome thoughts in writing this book. Namely, why would someone even want to read it? Eventually, I realized that millions of other people had experienced similar suffering like me, and long after this book would be published, millions more would suffer too. I reasoned that if this book reached even one struggling person stuck in the in-between that often follows tragedy, it was worth writing. What's inside this book? Part 1 focuses on my tragic experience of losing my mother. It is a raw, vulnerable piece of me that shows how humans sometimes hold on to hope until the very last second. It is the most moving part of this book, as I tried to hold on to a life that changes too rapidly for me to process. At the same time, I am walking in the death realms with my mother, and I experience incredible insights and messages from a higher plane of existence. Part 2 focuses on the time after my mother's death. In the in-between, I am partly in my old life and partly in my new one, trying to find my footing. I experience vivid, life-altering dreams, signs from my mother, and I consult with mediums and travel to Sedona in a desperate attempt to connect to my mom on the other side. In Part 3, I begin to plant a firm foot in the new world I am in, using dreams and creativity to guide me on my journey. I realize how our adversities present us with a choice to rise to our highest potential in life. Part 4 is partly introspective, focusing on what I have learned on my journey so far. It also incorporates my travels to Italy as well as other eye-opening experiences. We all cope with tragedies differently. I want people to know that if they are going through even remotely similar pain to what I went through, there is a way out of that pain. They can overcome. Thank you for listening to the introduction to This Side of the Dream, a memoir. If you're interested in purchasing this book, you can buy it on Amazon.com as a paperback or ebook, or barnesandnoble.com as a hardcover or paperback. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel to stay informed about new audio and video releases.